everyone, and welcome to the final panel session of the afternoon. As Peter said, titled Amazing Careers. So today I'm going to be joined on stage by the team from Molly's, who I'll welcome up in a moment, who also earlier, I just have to mention, ran into none other than Nile Rodgers in the foyer of the hotel. So if you want photographic evidence of that encounter, feel free to grab the team afterwards. But with that being said, I'd like to welcome up the team. So we have Darren Sweetland, Managing Director at Molly's, Kate Brooke-Green, Head of Food Development and Innovation at Molly's, Jessica Wilkins, who is the Finance Manager at Molly's, and Trudy Parr, who is Head of People and Development at Molly's. Hi guys, so thank you so much for being here. Today's session, we're going to sort of stay away from the negativity and doom and gloom that sort of seems to surround hospitality a little bit at the moment, and instead focus on the positives, including why hospitality is a viable and exciting career path, and how companies like Molly's are sort of a shining example of that, being contemporary, fun, and fast-growing at that as well. So first, we'll just do quickly brief introductions. If you just go down the panel and just introduce yourselves and tell me a little bit about what you guys do at Molly's.
So I'm Trudy Parr, all things people and all things development and recruitment and all those nice things.
I'm Kate Brooke-Green and I'm in charge of all things food and beverage.
I'm Jess, I'm Finance Manager. Quite a small finance team, so yeah, basically everything finance, from payroll to month end to, that.
Hi, I'm Darren Sweetland and I'm the Managing Director of Molly's.
Brilliant. And Darren, we'll start with you. If you want to talk a little bit about kind of how you came to be at Molly's and where the brand's at the moment.
Sure. I guess my venture into hospitality was probably untraditional in some sense. It came out of the enjoyment for liking going out and enjoying what is hospitality. I started my career in finance. Take a deep breath, it's an afternoon session. I actually trained as a chartered accountant. I started working in a large accountancy firm where I actually looked after a lot of retail and hospitality clients. And I got a bit of a like then for what I did, but what was brilliant about it is I was able to really look from a helicopter view as to how a business runs. And through moving through to Tesco, to Soho House, I found myself looking after Molly's, and it really came from Nick Jones, who dreamed up the idea of what Molly's is, and Nick gave me the opportunity to run a business and segue away from finance to take on something, and here I find myself now with my team as we grow.
Indeed, yeah. Just as a quick bit of context for anyone who hasn't heard of Molly's, it's essentially an affordable hotel and diner concept, and they have some very big growth plans to grow quite rapidly over the next coming years. And of course, with that comes recruitment, which is obviously the big issue of the day. So Trudy, I wanted to ask you from a recruitment perspective, what are the challenges and opportunities that expansion presents?
So the talent pool is obviously smaller. So we have competition and we need to make sure that we position ourselves right in order to get a good piece of that pie. So taking that, we have to make sure that we adapt and we look at that market. So if we're going into Manchester next year, so we need to make sure that we understand what the Manchester market's doing, we understand who our competitors are, but also how we get a USP while we're there. What is it that will make people come to Molly's over other hospitality businesses? So with that brings opportunity. So we are agile and we're young and we don't have a computer says no attitude. So we can make sure that we adapt and understand how important working lives are to people now. So it really isn't just about a job, it's about a career, training, development. So we focus completely on retention rather than recruitment. Mm-hmm. So everything's about retaining our staff, growing our staff, making sure they're advocates for us, making sure they talk well and passionately about us. So we grow them with our growth plans. So we don't have big gaps in the management piece as we grow. So it's about looking after them first, and then making sure that we put good career development plans, career pathways in place, training, development. So that as we go out to our recruitment piece, it's not just a job, there's a proposition that you can get involved with. So that, yeah, that's how we're going about it.
And do you think as well, people who are looking for jobs in hospitality, that they're now more invested in stories and culture and, you know, more than just the 9 to 5?
Yeah. And I think you want that. You want to feel something like you belong. You want to feel like you connect. You want to feel like you like being somewhere. I do, you know, so why wouldn't anybody else? And I think it's our job to make sure that we provide the tools. Obviously, it's a partnership and people need to bring to the table their side of it, but we definitely need to make sure that we give everybody the tools to make sure that we do our bit. Yeah, absolutely, people are looking for much more than a job.
Yeah, definitely. And so when it comes to you guys going out and looking for new recruits, who's sort of the Molly's ideal role model? What sort of candidates are you looking for? And, you know, what do you think in general the kind of candidate hospitality sector should be looking for?
Individuals with personality that can connect, that can give representation to your clients, to your customers, so people feel like they belong, so they don't feel like that we're churning out lots of people that are the same. It's about embracing that. It's about embracing that people are different, but people are passionate. We need people that want to grow with us, so growth-minded is essential. We know some people are just going to be here for the short time, supporting, you know, studies, etc. as well, but also opening the mindset that people can come and, you know, if you want to be in hospitality, you can do, there's much more to it. You can be an awesome person in marketing in a hospitality business that makes that amazing, and it's just opening lots of different doors, and it's not just what you think it is when you go out for dinner. There's so much more to it, and it's getting that point across, really.
Absolutely. And of course, one of the things that also attracts people to new jobs is actually having, you know, efficient systems and feeling like the workplace machine is sort of ticking along nicely. And of course, that leads us into tech. And we hear a lot about how tech sort of can impact the guest experience, but perhaps we don't hear so much about how it can also improve back of house as well. So Jess, I know you do a lot of work with that. So how would you say that new technologies and sort of shifts in workplace culture have enabled, have sort of changed the back of house operations for the better?
Yeah, I think it's quite well known that Molly's is known for its technology from the customer experience, but also all our back of house systems are all integrated, everything's quite seamless. So from a finance perspective and in the office, it's a lot less time spent on the reconciliations, and then also operationally asking sites to kind of look into the discrepancies. So from that side of thing, I think there's like been a massive time saving. And yeah, I think it just makes us all enjoy our jobs a bit more. It gives us that freedom, that creativity, and in turn, kind of, we all know a happier workforce means better productivity.
I think we often hear about with flexibility now, especially post-COVID. A lot of people want to work from home. They want to have a bit more flexibility in their schedule. And typically people say, you know, that can't happen in hospitality. But is there a world where, especially in back of house operations, you can have remote working?
Yeah, absolutely. And Darren kind of sets a precedent for that. We can work from the office, we can work from home, we can work from site. And I think it's just all about trust, to be honest. As long as we all know what work we need to get done, everyone else knows what work is going to get done. If that work gets done, it doesn't really matter where you are. And actually being able to work on site is quite helpful in terms of like the business partnering side of things, because it kind of allows you at a moment's notice to travel to site, spend that day with your head of ops, your general manager, and like look into issues and not always just be behind screens in support office and kind of not really a person, just someone on Excel.
And do you think those trends that were sort of born out of COVID, do you think they're here to stay? Or do you think we might end up going back to how things were pre-pandemic?
I hope they're here to stay. I don't know. I think like a younger company like Molly's, I hope, can like lead the way in that, because I think there's kind of that traditional view of like when you're working from home, you're not working. But I think we can all sit here and agree we all have very productive days at home.
Much more productive.
And actually can kind of ignore people and just get what you need to get done. And then when you're on site or when you're in the office, spend that time. It's also great. I love the office. I love the buzz. I love the feeling of working with other people. I wouldn't enjoy my job if I sat behind an Excel spreadsheet every day. But I just think, yeah, that flexibility, that mobility is really going to help a company like ours grow.
And just to add to that, I think we spent a lot of time during the pandemic investing in our technology, integrating this sort of world of, or ecosystem of systems. And I think, joined to what Jess just said, it was about how we change what somebody does and what their focus is. I've heard today, I think Jane mentioned earlier, about how the operations can feel more empowered to be able to make change by having more time to do it, because systems are taking care of things that ordinarily they would have had to do manually. But so is true around the support functions to the business too, spending time on things that perhaps aren't as value accretive as what Jess is referring to. And I think that is probably then what changes, to answer your question even, about the dynamic of working from home, because you feel like you can do more by being out and about, by being at site, and by interacting with others, because your focus on what you're doing has completely changed. And I think that's probably what hospitality, for me, the most exciting thing is the opportunity for such innovation that we can have in technology. And it's, as I say, I think it's just about as important as it is in the back end as much as the front end. And I think sometimes you can easily get distracted by the front end, which of course we're guilty of it as well. But actually the back end is incredibly important.
Yeah, and when it comes to sort of that synergy between back of house and front of house, in terms of business partnering, what does that look like today, and how has technology impacted that?
I guess business partnering needs to be timely, and so that mobility of working wherever you need to work and the system infrastructure that we have at Molly's allows all that analysis to kind of happen as and when is needed, and when's actually going to make the most impact and the most change to the business. So in that sense, yeah, I think it's massively changed. It's no longer going to site with a P&L printed out and kind of going through it. You can go with your laptop and kind of look into the numbers whilst you're there, provide analysis. And really, I think we're called a support office for a reason, because we're supporting operations. We're not called head office. And kind of my job as to business partner sites is to kind of give the right analysis to the teams, to the management team, to make the right commercial decision without making it for them.
And does that feed into recruitment as well, where you're sort of looking for people who have those entrepreneurial leadership skills?
Yeah, super important. We need leaders and support people that are empathetic, that are good listeners, that are entrepreneurial, that are there to find solutions or be solution finders. So yeah, that a different look on management and support for sure in terms of who we're looking for to join the business.
Definitely. And then obviously technology also impacts the F&B side of the operation, which, Kate, is your area of expertise. So how has technology sort of changed F&B in hotels and led to new developments?
Well, I mean, we work very closely all together, with Jess, so I think I can sort of like look at the numbers. So as Jess was saying, we are a support office, so I think from a back-end point of view, from F&B, I can certainly look at kind of the numbers, where the wastage is, where the efficiencies can be made, how we can help the kitchen with, i.e., sort of when customers are going to sort of roll through the door, what the peak and the troughs are, and we can really sort of start to piece that together and look at kind of how we can support the kitchen teams. But also from just a food perspective in regards to technology, we're lending on technology to help us develop sort of, better sustainable from an environment, social, economic positioning. We're looking at kind of like how we can lend and talk to our kind of like third-party manufacturers a lot better, how we can help one another out, how we're going to sort of like deliver the food, traceability, field to fork. Really, technology is massively advancing in the way in which we approach food development. The menu itself, looking at a balance of what we're going to use. We need to think about these really important things moving forward so that we can responsibly start to sort of push things forward.
Yeah, and do you think in turn that inspires the team as well to know that the company's making efforts to make a real change and difference?
100%, 100%. I think, we work really, really hard to kind of train, as Trudy was saying, train and inspire people in Molly's. And, for me, it's very much about taking somebody on a journey. It's telling them why we're doing things, why we're putting certain things on the menu, the choices that we've made, so that they can fully understand and get behind it. And then, of course, that then reflects on the customer and the experience the customer gets, because, our team are completely invested in making sure that, somebody that walks into Molly's has an amazing experience.
Yeah. And what are some of the trends you've seen on the consumer side that you've then responded to through your operations?
Well, I think certainly linking back into technology, I think sort of certainly moving into sort of Manchester, we're going to start to see a lot more kind of like personalisation using technology to lend us, to inform us of the grab and go. So we're going to focus quite heavily on that in Manchester, how we can kind of have a bit more of a bespoke offering for, thinking about health and well-being. And certainly, hopefully, we'll have customers that will sort of be able to say, hey, look, actually, this is what my pattern is. So when we arrive, actually, the technology will show us that, somebody wants this when they get there, and so I suppose, there's, masses really to talk about.
I think that when you sort of pin it back to what Molly's was first created, we decided very early on that in order to make a difference and bring this sort of 1950s, 60s motel back into the 21st century, we set out to really hone in on what we thought was important for the guest experience. And technology is something, obviously, everyone, I think you can see, is passionate to talk about because it really has changed our business. But we also have spent an incredible amount of time on design. We've spent a lot of time on our people and our training to bring them up to speed. But to answer your original question, Amy, I think the most empowering thing in what Kate has been able to bring to the development piece is she's been able to give back to the team the ability to give their ideas and put their ideas into practice. And before, perhaps, we invested in what we have, the training, the setup, the technology, we weren't really able to do that to the extremes of what we've done now. And so it means as we scale and we develop and we get bigger, we can be quite bold in how we uplift what we do.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, as well, hotels historically didn't always have the best reputation for their restaurants and food offering, and I think that's really changed in the last sort of 10 years or so. So in a market that is now quite saturated, how can hotels stand out with their F&B and make effective decisions and in turn inspire the team members?
Innovation. I think it's really just looking at, I think sometimes, don't overcomplicate something. I think it's about, stripping something back and looking at something sort of quite simplistically. I think, really concentrate on making sure that what you do is the best in market and delivering it really, really well. And I think, we don't need to reinvent the wheel per se, but we just need to make it really great. So, at Molly's, we're going to do some great, exciting things with, soft serves. And it's like, let's go back and think, right, how can we bring some nostalgia into something? How can we make it sort of like just shine with different touch points? Just that real kind of like taking a positioning of looking at it and putting innovation behind it. And I think that's just key, really, is just looking at your core product and just making it absolutely shine. And I think that's what we try and do on a daily basis, basically.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and when it comes to engaging the team as well, do you think it's important for them to sort of see the full end-to-end process of, the suppliers you work with, where stuff's coming from, where it ends up, all of that kind of process?
I think absolutely, and kind of next year we've got a big kind of like engagement piece where we certainly will be taking all our team members to our manufacturers, really kind of like taking them on that journey so that they can see that basically what the bigger picture is, where it all comes from, and they love that, they absolutely love that. And of course it's so important to have the engagement on both sides, so your teams need to actually live and breathe and be passionate. And so, the way in which they can do that is to see the full journey and everything from start to finish.
Yeah.
I think when we set out to create what Molly's is now, I don't think we quite appreciated initially how many people who were being employed to do the roles that they had applied for actually were interested in multiple parts of our business. And I think one of the learnings we've had, and something that Trudy's really pushed since she's been with the company, is to engage with people, talk to them regularly about their career and what they want to get out of it. And to Kate's point around being able to see things that perhaps you wouldn't ordinarily think is part of your day job actually just entices people to think about where they might go next in our company. And as we set out with our retention strategy, we've seen a huge number of people move from different departments, work across both, we've got somebody at the moment coming to work more in the support side of the business, and equally just on the operational side, people moving around and training in different areas of the business. And I think as we grow and as we scale, and it's obviously very easy when you're opening more sites, it's actually incredibly important to keep that level of spread that level of experience across the sites that you currently have, as much as you think about growth into the future.
So you want to be a company that's sort of growing your own and having people reach their full potential across the portfolio?
Absolutely, yeah.
So as you're kind of heading up, Darren, a model of a hospitality that is very much looking to the future, what do you think have been some of the really positive changes you've seen in recent years in the sector?
Well, I thought you were going to ask me that. I think we've talked a lot today about technology, and it would be wrong for me not to just sort of reaffirm why I think that is important. I think we are on a mission to become, our ultra sort of objective is to create something that's scalable, something that we know then can be rolled out and expand at a pace that allows us to deliver the same level of quality as we grow. And I think without our investment in the infrastructure behind that, and that's the very people that are sitting here with me today, but equally in the technology that the guys use on a day-to-day basis, we wouldn't be able to do it. So I think I've been really impressed by how quick and fast some of that technology is changing. And just as you think you're getting ahead and you're investing in something that perhaps is front edge, you then find yourself having to play catch up to the next thing and the next thing. But it's all coming from a really solid, great base that is, as we go into perhaps a difficult 12 months ahead of us, actually there's incredible amounts of efficiency that we can gain from that investment. I think the second thing that would be wrong not to mention is why I'm pleased to be sat here with my team, is that we have an incredible amount of skill and expertise in our business that perhaps we didn't necessarily unlock on a day-to-day basis. And actually what we've done now as a business and how we've transformed our senior team and how we've involved all of the operational teams and cascade that information through our organisation has allowed us to make really quick, fast decisions and the right decisions for our business. And I think it's going to hold us in good stead.
Definitely. And truly from a recruitment perspective, what sort of positive changes have you seen in recent times?
Well, more from a retention perspective for me, because like I said, I look at it as retention.
Yep.
Everybody concentrates on recruitment, and I know that's a big thing, but it's all about retention. And for that, I think that COVID did make everybody look inwards rather than externally, and that was really important for us all to do, and make sure that we really address what do people want. What do they want? How do we make them want to come and work for us? How do we make our business better? Because people make our business better. So how do we do that? So we have to listen to them. And more people listen to what their team want, asked what their team want, not when they're leaving, but do stay interviews. Really, we do how we do an interview to just make sure that we get a constant, drip feed of what's going on in the business. And that to me is really important, and that's what's been the biggest change. Everybody now has to think, how do we win this? How do we win this battle on recruitment or retention? And it's all positive as far as I'm concerned in terms of a business is going to look much better, people are going to feel better, and there's going to be more quality of work.
Yeah, it's quite an interesting shift, isn't it? Because it's almost become an employee market
100%.
where you're sort of trying to get them rather than the other way around.
Yeah.
But of course that leads to when they are eventually hired, they're more engaged and more willing to be there because they've specifically chosen you.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's all about changing for people.
Definitely. And so to wrap up, I'm going to ask a little bit about the expansion plans for the future, as we've obviously talked a lot about how Molly's is kind of a rapidly growing brand. So what are some of those plans, and how does that development sort of reflect the wider trends in the industry?
Okay. Well, we started life as a roadside offering, and we opened our Oxfordshire site in 2019, and it was perhaps interesting time to be reinventing what we thought was the new roadside offering. Since then, we opened a second roadside location in Bristol in July 2021. And again, we've been really, really pleased with how that model has worked. I think the two businesses have, and I say two businesses because the motel and the diner act as two independent businesses, despite the fact they come under one heading and one site location. Since then, our thinking has sort of carried on, and we're now about to open our first city centre property in Manchester. We're opening in the Old Granada Studios. Again, it's full of new ideas and new creations that I won't spoil, but different to perhaps what we necessarily have done in Oxford and Bristol. But the expansion continues. We've got 2 or 3 others in the pipeline now. We've started to engage with some further. The key thing for us is how do we saturate the UK and have our key destinations in the UK. But we're now thinking around both roadside, city centre and resort-led locations.
Mm-hmm. And do you think as well that people now, they're looking more for that experience-led properties and stays, perhaps more so than before?
I think what's definitely changed is people now are expecting something different when they arrive. They're not looking necessarily for the same as what they've had before, that's for sure. People have always wanted more convenience. I think we've seen through the pandemic how we've tried to adapt our way of working and how we've tried to provide something that's very easy and accessible. And I think now the move is more towards, constant, creativity in what you offer when someone walks through the door. And I think we've spent a lot of time rethinking our design. Every property we own, we evolve that design, we rethink, and Manchester is case in point. We've really, really worked hard to produce something quite special, I think, from a design perspective. So I think that's definitely been apparent through the pandemic. But again, what Molly's is trying to do is we're trying to go into that market segment that's highly affordable, very, very, sort of at the moment saturated with similar offerings, and really reinvent what we think that could look like in the future. And as we grow our estate and as we take on more sites, we're adding more and more to that.
Yeah, well, it sounds like some really exciting times ahead. So thank you very much, guys, for your insight there. And of course, we'll all be up to Manchester for the launch party sometime next year.
Absolutely.
So yeah, thank you very much. I'd like to thank the team from Molly's again for that great talk.